Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference first panel discussion. It is a distinct pleasure and honor to be up here on stage with all of these great minds, sharing our thoughts and feelings. This goes back to some of our presentations today, where we're going to be presenting some questions. We're going to be answering some questions from the audience, but we're going to be presenting some questions to the audiences of the world. And essentially, this is going to be our first foray into the idea of maybe crowdsourcing knowledge and information and conceptual ideas that can, maybe change and pursue or move forward our agendas and what we're working with here today. So, I'll start off with a little saying. A good friend of mine told me once, obey the rules, obey them very, very well until you understand why they're the rules, so then you can break them. So we're going to be breaking this up into a kind of almost like a debate deal, where we have some questions from the audience. We have some questions that have come up during the presentations. Some of them will be directed specifically to certain people. Some of them will be directed to the panel members in general. And if they're directed to certain people, then they'll answer, and then anybody else can chime in and jump in anytime they need to after the first person answers the question. That's the rule, and we'll see if we actually stick to it. All right, so we're going to start off with the very first question posed to us by an audience member, and it's an open question, and it shoehorns in with actually some of the other questions that came up during the presentations. So, as it says, when can I expect to see a commercially available replacement for my home electricity from the city? Any candidates on the horizon? Anyone?
That's easy. When hell freezes over.
All right.
Now, I've worked with free energy technology starting back in the early 90s, and I've seen many promising technologies that could power everything cleanly and clean up the planet, and one by one they've been systematically prevented from getting onto the market. But I still know that it's coming because I've seen more and more people actually making these technologies now. More people have understood how to make them. There's YouTube videos all over the place with people making stuff in their houses and garages. So I would think within the next 25 years that we're going to have, I don't know about your city providing, I don't think there's going to be a city providing or a grid. I think it's going to be no grid. We don't need a grid. Somebody was asking me at a conference about, what happens if there's an EMP pulse and the grid's destroyed? I was like, don't worry about it. You can make free energy right now in your own house. So I think within the next 25 years or so, we'll be seeing it in some form or fashion.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I will. One of the things I think that's going to propel that very quickly is eventually there's probably going to be a brownout that's not going to be, we have like 3 days will be put back online. And it'll probably be basically combination of Mother Nature and probably a perfect storm type of thing. And the grid itself is just an absolute nightmare. Eric Dollard has spoken about it. Several people have spoken about it. And if you know how it's really set up, it's the same infrastructure that we have basically with roads, bridges, everything else. Because knowing the power people and just companies in general, they will take all the money out and never put anything back in, and then hope that all of a sudden, things will work out and fix themselves automatically. So at the end of the day, it's going to be when a grid goes down, it's going to interrupt finance, it's going to interrupt business, and then they're going to say, okay, well, how can this be fixed? And they'll say, well, China is usually the only people who can make some of the big transformers now, some of the substation transformers. And so if those things are taken out, and if it's just by accident, somebody will jump on there and say it was some goofy terrorist thing. And then the real question is going to be on their hands is like, how are we going to get the power back? Now, a way that will probably happen, more likely, is then the government, because the people will be in pure panic. 1, no food. 2, no gas. 3, no lottery tickets. So when you put those two things together, what's going to happen is the government will all of a sudden bring out some nice free black boxes that will be installed on generators that will actually probably look like regular diesel generators, get power going. The Corps Army engineers will be brought in, and then all of a sudden, some free stuff is going to start flowing. And then at that point, the other side of the coin is that what I want to be able to do is get out to the general public how to make just small units that will demonstrate the opportunity of, quote, free energy, and then at the same time be able to bring out an educational toy that will change a paradigm of type of educational system. Because if you don't change it and you don't give it to the little ones to understand, and the kids go ahead, hey, mommy, look at my little free energy unit. And she's going to say, you know what I love about it? There's no batteries. They're going to love that. Mommy doesn't want batteries. You know, that costs money. That's CVS. That's a drive down the road. No, that's not going to happen. So she goes, I love your little free energy, Johnny. You know, show it to your friends. Then all of a sudden, the engineer will find out, oh, you know, this actually is pretty cool. So when, like, basically it's snowballing, and it's just a matter of time before something. And it's always some stupid tragedy type of thing that in the beginning will happen, but then when you look at it and you get through it, you're like, whoa, you know, things came out, that was pretty good. And the best way to kind of look at it is the way some of my friends right now that I know, they're all going through divorces, but a lot of them right now are going, wow, I'm happy. You know.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any feedback? I love the idea of an educational toy that children can create. That's par excellence. I remember when I was growing up, when I was young, there were educational kits that were tremendously expensive. Now you can buy them for $1 at the dollar store, but they were very educational and in conceptualizing new concepts, it was great, or implementing new concepts for a child. So I think that's actually one of the best ways to go with any of this free energy technology. Yes. And even just the modeling the paradigms of vortex-based mathematics or whatnot. Okay, we're going to move along here. The next question is for Mike Upstone. So, what can an individual do to assist the dissemination of breakthrough technology based on your presentation and your knowledge of system information and working as a systemic whole?
Okay, well, I think we need to find that simple, proven, safe technology and get it released out to the world. Everyone is going to have a different role to play, and it depends on our particular gifts, experience, speciality, and what we're drawn to. So we should be following our passion with this. So if your passion is talking to people about it, go out and tell your friends about it. But we need to have a first sort of benchmark, if you like, that is really ideally free, open, and available so that people can start to use it now. And I think then we'll be looking at 100 monkeys syndrome as well. So my belief is that this can happen very, very quickly, especially with the internet as well. The ability for information and practical solutions to be delivered to people very, very quickly and very easily. And I think that when something like that is released to the world, it will catch on quickly. And those people who are sitting on their technologies now will then have pretty much be sitting on the horns of a dilemma. What do I do? I think the way to deal with that is to get your technology released as quickly as possible as well. So once that happens, it's going to be like a crack in a dam. And we just need to direct that flow in the right direction. And if that happens, then we're going to see cracks in the dam appearing all over the place. And I think things are going to move very, very quickly from that point. I don't think necessarily it's going to start to lift off in somewhere like the UK or the US first. I think it will do in a very, very niche sense. But I can see the willingness and openness to this being more out there in third world countries, countries that already know they're on the back foot and they have a disadvantage and they have less to lose by jumping in and adopting this technology, especially while the existing system is in a state of flux and near collapse. So what can we do? Whatever we're drawn to. however we think we can help. But the main thing that we can do is make a conscious decision that that's going to be our intention, and we're going to work together collaboratively to make it happen and bring all of our gifts to bear to that.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Can I jump in here? Is anybody? Imagine, if you will, instead of a Tupperware party or one of the other parties that we have in the suburbs that I don't live in anymore, a hydrogen installation party where everyone in this room goes out and buys a hydrogen device, not to get any better gas mileage, but to clean up the emissions of their vehicle. And they invite a bunch of friends and family over, and they have a big barbecue, and they put it in place based on very simple directions, and they say, hey, look, see, I'm doing something for the environment. I'm actually doing something. It may not be much, but I'm doing something. And it comes back to that grassroots movement saying, here's what we can do. And if you can't walk, you crawl. So that's where we go. That's my perspective on it.
I think I'd like to just chime in a little bit, because I think I know Mike a little bit, and there are many people he knows around the world. There's networks, and by linking the networks, I think then it becomes a stronger web and a stronger bond, and it can't be just gone out one place. It has to go out viral when it goes. So that's my thought about that, and I know you have some of those connections.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the
And at
beautiful.
the end of the day, basically it all gets back to what I said earlier. It's sharing. And as long as you share the knowledge, everybody will love it. Now, from that point of view, if you talk about how things could go awry, the biggest thing that most people right now are so connected to is the internet. And most people think that, well, energy, if the lines go down or something like that, they can almost live with that within a certain degree. But I can tell you this right now, if the social lines go down, think about what happens there, because then nobody's connected at that point. Everybody better know how to run, walk, or crawl to their neighbor, because the actual idea of having the internet go down, the cell towers go down. That's why when I look at some of the areas where we talk about, oh, there's terrorism and everything like that, well, there can be, if you wipe out the cell towers in the United States or anywhere else, then you're talking about some serious, serious problems.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, moving right along. I don't have a clock. If we had a clock, that would
I'm going to say one
probably
thing,
help me here.
Vernon, to that.
Mhm.
Just one as a consequence. The one thing that I think we can do that's best is to know your community, know the people around you, and to build community so that if something does happen, then there's already a network, and we start from our own grassroots. And so I think that's important. It's important to knock on your doors, that the people next to you. It's important to know. I know where I was, I've just moved, but where we were all working as a community within even our own streets and blocks, and we had discussions of what would happen, and we were all collectively sharing what we all had. So I'd say community is still the best thing.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to another audience question. And this goes out to anyone, what are the top 3 supplements you take to maintain optimal health? And does anyone on the panel use Ormus?
I'll take that one.
Yes.
Hello? Yeah. Basically, from a health point of view, I used to be running about 140, 180 miles a week. And what I used to do more than anything else is vitamin C. Vitamin C is an inflammatory. And if you take it, basically it will calm down your whole entire body and do all kinds of good things. The other 2 and 3 things I used to take is licorice, and I used to take basically vitamin E and vitamin, what was the other thing? Lysocin or something like that. But outside of that, nothing else. For me, it's pizza, some beer, and vitamins when I basically, once in a while feel it. And that's usually probably about, 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. But the big thing about health, more than anything else, is to let the ether streams and let your mind be open and sharing. That's where health is. What happens is, why you have to take all these other things is, when I was running 180 miles a week, basically, you're basically damaging faster than your body can repair itself. And that's the only thing. The body knew what I was doing. And so I just had to say, okay, here, I'm assisting it a little bit better. But when it really comes down to health, health is actually being nice to yourself and being nice to others. When you're nice to yourself and nice to others, then you have good health. When you block it, you don't have good health. And all you have to do is understand how to unblock it, and that's usually to be nice to yourself.
I love that.
Well, if you guys saw my presentation today, you know a lot of what I do, but top 3 for me, supplements. One of my favorites is a product called Intramax by Clark Laboratories. It is a superfood in a bottle. It's food-based nutrients, but it's extremely dense in everything: vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, phytonutrients, just tons and tons of stuff in one small package. So particularly if I'm really busy, if I can't do anything else, I can take a capful of that stuff and be on my way. But in general, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and enzymes are the most important, and they need to be in a food-based supplement so you get them in the right ratios to each other. Other of my favorite supplements that I do every day, E3 Live, which is a blue-green algae from Klamath Lake, Oregon. It's frozen. That's very high in ormus. Natural form of ormus. It's basically algae that eats volcanic ash, and volcanic rock is high in ormus, so it makes it bioavailable. And then probably my next major supplement would be a product called Oxylent, which is it's a chelated mineral product, and it's got a huge range of electrolytes and minerals in it. Minerals are extremely important for building all the structures in the body. So most people, as you age, what happens is you convert or you lose organic minerals in the body and you gain inorganic minerals in the body. So basically your body calcifies. And so if you don't do specific things to reverse that over time, you become less and less healthy because your body has less minerals and materials to repair and rebuild itself while it's getting decrepit and getting frozen up with calcium and minerals. So, and yes, I do take ormus supplements. I usually take them in my food, though. As I mentioned in my presentation, most of the ormus I get, I feed it to my plants, I feed it to my sprouts, I ferment it in ferments, and I get it that way. But I do like the Ancient Tech ormus supplements. They're quite amazing. I particularly do them when I'm cleansing, because you don't just get physical effects from them, you also get mental and spiritual and emotional effects from them. And I don't know if anybody else has ormus products off the top of my head, but that's my take.
We'll go for it. Because mine's not really supplements. But you know what it is? It's a good glass of wine, a hot tub, and my soul food and learning. That to me is what feeds my soul. So for me, that's my supplements.
Excellent.
Yeah. Time for me to contribute a little bit as well. Yeah, I don't do too much in the way of supplements. I take some, I think, well, they call it healing soil in Austria. I think it's probably bentonite or some kind of clay. Very, very good, excellent for the digestion. I use some TCM, essential oils, things like oil of thieves, organic. And I'll mix that with some pure alcohol and then mix it in water and use it as a spray, e.g. on flights and things like that. Antibiotic, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, etc. But the main stuff I use is Russian space healing technology, the Cosmodic and the Scanar. And also in combination with a particular laser from the US, the Q1000 or the Q10. And the latter two, the Cosmodic and the laser, stimulate regenerative capacity in the body, and the Scanar is an energy healing technology. And I always sleep under a heating blanket as well, which is a technology that was very similar to Reich technology. I think it's layers of non-conductive cotton and ultra-conductive, very thin layers of palladium. So that tends to not just wrap out EMF and things like that, but it also reflects your own energetic field back into your body, helping to promote repair. So that's what I use.
We haven't heard anything from that end of the table yet.
It's you.
I take Viagra.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't say anything. No, I'm just kidding. What I try to do is I try to stimulate my pineal gland and open up my energy channels, and I do it all just. Well, I sun gaze. I guess that would be a supplement, but does anybody here sun gaze? Yeah? Oh, cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, so I don't need to tell you all about that, but it's awesome. It is where just about all of the food normal food that we eat is some form of solar energy. And so it is a very potent form of nutrition. And it basically, the way I understand it is the photons from the sun come in and hit a special photoreceptor in the back of your retina, right at the focal point. And that photoreceptor converts the photons into vitamin D and then pumps it directly into your pineal gland. So it's pretty...
You do these too.
Oh, yeah. And I do work with Ormus. I make chakra tuning jewelry and orgones and things like that. And I put Ormus that a friend of mine makes. She makes it out of Atlantic Sea ocean water, and energetically, it's really all about tuning. I spend a lot of time just tuning myself. I think it's more meditative. I don't take any physical supplements other than just trying to pay attention to my body and what my energy is doing.
And since thank you very much for that.
Okay.
And since everybody else has chimed in, I will go with vitamin C. Large doses of vitamin C. If I could get it in an IV, I would. But vitamin C, I would go with, if I just had to pick three, I would go with the Ancient Tech Etheric Gold, and I would go with chaga mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
The Russian version of chaga. So that's where I would go. All right, anybody have any new questions, by the way? Because we're kind of burning through some as we answer them inadvertently. So think on that, okay? Next question, put it out there to everybody. What are the Europeans doing to promote free energy devices? And I'm going to open that up to the rest of the world. We know about Joe Cell in Australia. We know about the magnetic motor inventor in China. But does anyone know about the work being done on free energy out there away from the U.S.?
Just a little.
Don't say guess you.
I did actually notice that no one actually spoke up and said anything about Italy. So, anything?
Yeah.
Well, I worked with water fuel back in the 90s, and I've followed some companies in France and Italy working on, like I think a compressed air car, and Japan had a water car. So I've seen bits and pieces around the world, but honestly, after working with free energy and seeing all the negative stuff that went on with it, I kind of moved away from that, and I haven't been paying too much attention to what's been going on outside the United States. But there are brilliant people everywhere, so I'm sure there's tons of stuff going on in the rest of the world. We don't hear a lot about it here because of our media.
I'm going to agree with that. I did work with a gentleman who traveled to Japan, and he met with the Prime Minister of Scientific Development in Japan. And one of the and he was taken to his house in downtown Tokyo, and one of the interesting things that this gentleman had developed was a solar panel that worked off of heat. Instead of light, it worked off of heat, and it harvested heat energy. If you can imagine a carbon composite panel approximately 3 inches thick with some type of fibrous material worked through it, almost like a crystal in nature. And then the entire south-facing wall of this was covered with this panel. And there are pictures about this. I'm not talking about anything proprietary or anything I shouldn't be talking about. It was Dr. Nakamatsu, I believe his name was, that developed this. And this entire south-facing wall was covered with these panels, as well as the roof of the 5-story building. And those panels placed in those positions generated in excess of 25 kilowatts of energy. And the system was that it was gathering heat, not electrical, and it was turning, not photovoltaic, it was gathering heat and turning the heat directly into electricity. So its conversion factor was much, much higher than conventional solar. Nakamatsu is also an expert in developing a system of vacuum-based energy. He had a hydrogen device that was based entirely upon a vacuum that he could turn slightly larger than this water bottle, and he could create a vacuum in there, and the water would literally boil out, separating into oxygen and hydrogen. And he could run a little motorcycle on something about the size of a big beer can. This was all documented, put into a book. I don't know why they don't hire better English translators. It was probably the worst translation I've ever read. And they don't like us in Japan. We play nice, but they said, no, this will never be sold in America or Europe. So it is being done. It's being developed there. There are some amazing technologies. I mean, you would just, that solar panel, that heat to electricity solar panel is worth its weight in gold. And I don't know why we don't have it, because that particular trip and that particular documentation was done approximately 7 years ago. So hopefully, now one thing that you have to realize is that when you develop something new, not an innovation, but something brand new, time from development into implementation when you can buy it on a Walmart shelf is usually between 20 and 30 years. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait that long. So that's why we're talking grassroots, that's why we're talking community-based development of these projects. So we vote with our feet. We vote with our time, we vote with our energy, and we vote with our money. So let's start voting for this one, shall we?
One of the other things I'd like to intercede with that is that there was a guy named Don Smith. Some of you might be familiar with maybe his technology. But one of the things he did is that he had a Japanese company come to him. And the Japanese company, what they did is they had, in Japan, they have like these, they're sort of like our Coca-Cola machines. You get everything out of these things. And what he was running into is like all the sushi and fish and meat and everything like that in his machines. The kids would come along and cut the cord. And so he went to this Don Smith guy and he sat there and he said, can you put an energy system into my machine so I don't have to worry about that? And he did. And so very little people know about it. Very little people know even about Don Smith or what his invention was. And basically, put it in a nutshell, he took Tesla's ideas and shrunk them down. And that's basically it. And they do work. And it's one of the things I'm working on, but at the same time, I want to be able to put it into a solid state type of device and then go ahead and hand it to people at the end of the day. And it's going to be an amazing piece of technology. But you really have to understand Tesla. And the reason why I know about Tesla is because I literally read them from when I was 5 years old. And I've built 99% of most of all his equipment. And by doing that, I tested it. I did the Colorado experiments on a quarter scale. I built up the coils. I did the ground experiments. And then I did all kinds of other stuff. All the information is in his books, but you have to be open enough to read what's going on. And if you're closed-minded, you're not going to get it. But getting back to Don Smith, he was able to shrink it down. I was at the conferences back in like 90, 94, 96, something like that, and they were very, very impressive. And what was really funny is not only did he do that, he also was approached by the Japan again with the bullet train, and he implemented some of the technology in there. And one of the things about this is there are a lot of companies right now that know all about, worldwide, they know about this, quote, free energy, overunity, whatever you call it. But what they want to see is they have to answer to board members, and they have to answer to stock people. And what they want to see is we will let's say they can go, 125% over something and get gains like that. What they'll do is they'll only let a little bit out. So at the next convention show, they sit there and they're just a little bit ahead of the #1 competitor, and they become the #1 competitor. And they let it out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, because they want to go ahead and do it and keep it in the pipeline. A perfect example, Apple ran into that trouble because what's his name, Steve Jobs didn't want to release everything in the phone. And then all of a sudden, Samsung and all the people came running down his back. And right now, you see what's going on with the iPhone. It's still a good phone and everything, but he should have put everything into it. He would have been way ahead at the beginning. And again, it's all about how you want to approach it. And that's why I like your prospectus. You have to know where you're looking at it. I just love that analogy of the big, chaos all up in. And I've worked in restaurants, and everybody sits there and they go in for a great meal, and then all of a sudden, you never think about what's going on in the back. It is pure hell and chaos going on in the kitchen, In some of the finest restaurants in New York, you basically go into a fresh French restaurant, and as Anthony Bourdain says, you have Mexicans making some of the best food in the world, and it's just such an illusion. And once you get past the illusion, and you're able to sit here and reconcile yourself with like, wow, free energy, we can get it out there. And I think the reason why the rest of the world, I think they keep a lid on it a lot more, only for the fact that they're a lot older countries. We're like 100 years basically. It's like a little teenager kid running around, hasn't figured out what they want to do with their life, and it's running around, and we've got to put our fingers in absolutely everything. And what's really happening is that the people on this planet are getting a little tired of the little kid wandering around poking his nose where it shouldn't be, But at the same time, all things will sort of work out.
Does anyone else want to jump in? Okay, we have one on the subject. Any news on the anti-gravity front regarding a breakthrough? I'll listen to rumors if that is all we have. Really want a personal UFO. I think I know who this is.
Jason Verbelli should be here. He probably knows.
I will go with this. One of the things I think with anti-gravity is the fact that you sort of look at it like right now. We can barely handle ourselves on I-95, places like that with cars. Do you even think that the average person is going to be allowed to have an anti-gravity device? I mean, I guarantee you on a planet, they have a type of device like this, and you put a little beam thing in here, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, Charlie, I'm going to beam you up there. Look at that. And then he says, watch, I'm going to put you in the free fall, hits a button. Boom, oh, I stopped you. Then the next time he does it, oh, my battery didn't work, and there goes splatter all over the ground. Oh. And so when you think about anti-gravity, it's there, I think, behind the scenes. I've studied it a lot. There's some experiments I've done myself. I don't want to get into that because I've got so many things on the irons in the fire, basically. But when you think about it, until we can emotionally and spiritually handle a device like that, then all of a sudden, we will have it. But right now, we're not going to have it until basically the best bet, personally, And if there's any backers or people who want to do that, we do have the technology to do Mike Walter's VTOL. It is unbelievable what that guy has put together in that unit. And if you really want to find out, speak to him. And that is probably one of the best bets to do it. And one of the biggest things they're going to fight with that is the FAA regulations, more so than anything else. But I've talked to a couple pilots just on these flights over here talking about things, and they're looking for anything better than these, like, you know, tin sardines that we're flying around in. I mean, seriously. You know, I mean, they make them any smaller and shove more people in them. I mean, it's just amazing they work, you know.
I like the idea that Mike will take us into the new Jetson era.
Yes.
And that's what I think.
Yep.
I think he's going to take us into the age of flight
Yeah.
when we look at that, and it'll be really sweet.
And the funny thing about that, what Mike's really looking for, if you put $1 million into this, he can work at my lab and go ahead and develop a quarter scale model that will represent everything in that. And then after that, you get somebody just like, you know, Bosie or all these rocket guys. I mean, they throw $10 million, it's chump change to them. And then he can be able to build one, because the beauty of this is his design is the parts are already there. It's the same thing that I design my stuff with, is I deal with parts that already are there. Why make something that, you know, you have to re-engineer? All you want manufacturers to do right now is outsource it. You bring the parts in, you have assembly lines, you create work for other people that are out of work, and then you build beautiful products. And it's all about how you want the planet to look. You want to have a beautiful planet, or you don't. It's like when you get, people spend tons of money going to Europe because it's pretty. You come to the United States and it's a gigantic mall. You know, it's a flea market at the end of the day. And I damn well know that Europeans sometimes look at, like, we come to America and they get back and they go, oh, how was it? I'm not sure.
Zion's National Park.
Yeah.
Just Zion's National Park. You had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys recall, at the last GlobalBEM in 2013, Russell Anderson gave a presentation about Searle Magnetics anti-gravitation technology. And it's my understanding Searle's had it for many years, decades, I think since the 50s. And also in 2008, I met a Los Alamos scientist, a former Los Alamos scientist who was building anti-gravity flying saucers, who said he had his technology taken away from him because he and some of his fellow scientists at Los Alamos built an anti-gravity flying saucer and were flying it around the Southwest and got caught. So it's definitely out there.
It's been out there with Victor Scheiberger's work. I
Yeah.
mean, during World War II, I mean, they had that technology already.
Yeah, and if
So
you
it's not
watch
new.
like Corey Good's information now on Guy MTV, who claims to be part of the secret space program, he's saying it's been around since the early 1900s at least. So
Yeah.
I would like to add one thing about that. I'm not 100% sure, but
At the mic. And you thought you were going to avoid the camera.
no. And I promised it to him. Paul Laviolette has a crowdfund campaign going now to, excuse me that I don't know the exact name, but to get a thruster into space that is actually powered by an anti-gravity device. They've got the physics for it. The plan is there. He's convinced that it works. They're only gonna get. They're now working on the model, and they're getting the money together through a crowdfund. So look up Paul Laviolette, and this is one of the researchers who has hardcore proof that this stuff works.
how do you spell that?
Laviolette, Laviolette. And we have a post about that on our website, on our Facebook page, about that campaign, and so people can find them in that way.
Perfect.
All right. Any more? Next one's going to go down to the end of the table. And this is a question that's very near and dear to my heart, because a good friend of mine passed away last year, Mike Riversong, and his whole passion was, part of his passion was education through music. So what type of role do you see frequency in music in the breakthrough energy movement? I mean, you provided some fantastic background music there. It harkened back to the Roman era when you would have live music for all of your lectures and presentations there on the forum. So what do you see with that?
I enjoy music because it I think, as much as anything else, really brings me into the present moment and calls forth a degree of consciousness that feels special, and I particularly enjoy the ability to play music with other people, particularly if we have no idea what we're doing, and if it's not written out, if it's not even been rehearsed, is I think the most enjoyable. There's this incredible intuitive sense that we all have that's I think within all of us, and playing music in that type of improvisational way really opens you up to that, and it gives you great reverence that there's this other level of intelligence that we can tap into. And I really enjoy working with children, sort of encouraging them to explore things that freely, to not apply judgment to what they're doing, but just to have fun with it and see how far they can open themselves up and play. And it was really fun. I was working with the Crestone Charter School up in Colorado, and they had this really neat program, and the teacher invited me in to teach the kids some ukuleles, and so I was buying these ukuleles by the dozen and these little painted things, and so I showed up at their school with 30 ukuleles or something like that. And these were second graders, and so I was gonna teach them ukulele for a couple hours, and then we were gonna do a concert for all their parents. So, and none of them had ever played before. So the first thing, this little kid with a lot of energy, and he was diagnosed ADHD and had all these issues. The first thing he did is he grabbed his ukulele and he was getting ready to swing it over somebody's head. I mean, it's complete, troublemaker child. And we just tuned him into the instrument, and he became fascinated by it, and he took all of that energy and just channeled it into the ukulele. And so we did the concert. It was great. The kids, performed wonderfully. And then the teacher called up a couple weeks later. She said, every time Billy over here gets in trouble, I just send him out into the hallway with his ukulele, and you should hear this guy. He's a monster shredder now, and so he's taking all his frustrations and whatever and channeling it into being an awesome ukulele player. So that was really inspiring, for me to be able to help out in that way and inspire the kids. And I think that the music can be a great source of inspiration. For me, it's a great source of personal freedom. So basically everything that I was playing today was just making it up. So,
music, I was going to say, I grew up with music literally when I was about 5 years old. I used to listen to Rachmaninoff, all the classics, all the blues. My father is a flamenco guitarist. He has a dance company up in Harrisburg. And right now, he is sitting here basically drinking vodka playing flamenco music with a group that they have every Saturday night for the last 40 years. He's 87 years old, and he has taught children as little as 1 or 2 years old. And one of the beautiful things about music is that music all over the world right now is basically making the ether vibrate and offset all of the disharmony that's happening. And it's the music that's going to slowly change everybody. And at the end of the day, if you cannot bring that music into your heart, then what's really going to happen is that a group of people, there's no more time to be on the fence. There is time to make a decision to get off the fence and make a decision on the other side of the fence. And that's where we're coming down to. And one of the things that's really going to bring that in is the music. It's one of the reasons why everybody has, earwigs in their ears just listening to everything, because they know, they feel the disharmony. They can't do anything about it, but they need to sit there and keep their own world safe. And the only way you can do that is through music. And speaking about the little children and everything, that's exactly what my dad used to do. Is he would go in there and he would teach them how to do flamenco. He would teach them the steps and everything. And all this stuff, these labels and everything like that. The minute you put a label on yourself, that's a death knell. You're done. Because then all of a sudden it's going to go into your body. It's going to represent in your mind just like a hard drive. You're never going to get it out like a tape loop. And one of the things that happen with little children is they have about 8 years, and there's a book called The Heroic Choice. And what that basically means is that by the time they get to about 8 or 9 years old, they have already decided to do one thing: either go with the pack and basically bow down and do whatever the pack is doing, or stand alone and then decide, hey, I want to see how creative I can be and everything like that. And it's a huge choice for the average person to make. So most people, sometimes they will switch it. But when that is made, they have imprinted their life. And the funny thing about music is they can unimprint it, but it will have to go through music. And music is literally, I can't even say enough about it, because I've grown up all my life with some of the best music in the world. Everything from classics to AC/DC and in between.
I want to say I think we look at things as a one-off, and I think we need to reinvent what I call the Renaissance man. Because when you put it all together, I mean, when we play music, we're playing the rhythms. We're learning that there is a construct to the universe that has a frequency and a geometry and an art, and it's not one or the other. They need to be put together in a cross-disciplinary fashion, so that for those who have a fascination with numbers, it's fine, but their fascination with numbers is nothing but a representation of the art that we see that's been gifted to us to experience. And so the nice thing about music, it is the rhythm, and because of the phases and the way we pulse and we're in or out of phase makes a difference of how we actually blend and create our own harmony. So it isn't one or the other. It's really understanding all of it and respecting all of it. And I think then those who just run the numbers won't have just a dominance, because this is a beautiful planet. So we need the reemergence of the Renaissance approach.
So I'm hearing two things here. We're seeing coherence out of chaos through music, or frequency, vibration, changing the mental state. And I'm seeing a big drum circle next year with drums, tambourines, maybe even some belly dancing.
There you go.
Awesome.
And if we get more people here next year, I will be the belly dancer. So
All right.
I've seen some awesome belly dancers.
I used to belly dance. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep. All right. So we're going
Can I chip in on this one?
Yeah. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. There's a phenomenal.
Because we've got 45 minutes left.
Cool. There's a phenomenal technology which is already available and linked to music, but it's not really about music. It's called the triad wave. And the triad wave technology, you can look it up. It's available. It's out now, and it's hard to explain really what it is and what it does. But it's a series of natural frequencies that create like a mesh, a web, a natural field. And that field effect enables you at a DNA and a cellular level in your body to be able to identify non-resonant signals. So what this means is that our bodies are so out of balance, our brains, our hearts and our guts are the thinking and processing mechanisms of the body, and they're out of balance at the moment. But this allows that balance to be regained, and that allows your body to observe and then deal with various frequencies in the environment is one effect of it. So what that means is it can then spot things like EMF disturbing its system and form a defense mechanism against it. Or it can see and perceive then resonant frequencies that have potential healing qualities and actually allow itself to consciously absorb them. But it can also be utilized to create a field, a resonant field in a group in which dissonance can be exposed, but it also helps those who are able to align at the same time. So this is an absolutely remarkable technology. It's available on iTunes and I think a few other apps, and it's available in a musical format, so you can listen to it or you can just switch it down so you can't even hear it. But that field is then being developed, and it, you know, it's. I was playing it earlier on in this room, and I believe that it was helping to support that field. And the best way I can describe it is, you can't see the breeze, but when there's a net curtain at the window and the window's open, you can see the breeze operating through the mesh. Now, some of you may be familiar with moire patterns, and that's when someone's got maybe a thin striped shirt or dress or something like that on television, and suddenly you see all of these patterns arriving. Well, this, because it's got a number of natural frequencies incorporated and woven together, is like 3 layers of mesh. And now your body and your eyes are able to actually witness that breeze moving through the air. And that means that this pattern can be recognized, but it works energetically with the DNA and with the body at a cellular level. So it's a truly phenomenal and very, very powerful technology for healing, for energy, for all sorts of other things.
And don't forget, they can make your DNA has a song. So you can actually, somebody can take the pattern of your DNA, go record it, and they can actually play it back to you. That's what Stuart Mitchell does in England. Mm. So yeah, so you are a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I just have to say I'm astounded by the level of knowledge and wisdom on the stage right now. We're going to move on to some a little bit more tougher questions. Regarding testing and vetting of new energy technologies, please talk about the relative merits of having engineers who are familiar with the new energy tech versus those who are not familiar with the new energy tech as vetters. Can I lead this one off?
Sure.
One of the things that I've been doing recently is to create a vetting protocol that could be used as a type of rubric. And I have to say, as an inventor, vetting is not my favorite word, nor is due diligence, because as an inventor who has created something new and dynamic, how do you do due diligence on something that is brand new and has no history? So there's some issues there. The other issue is that we run into is that these are new energies. So how do you test certain types of new energies? I have a friend who has a radiant energy technology. He studies Tesla. He created a Tesla-based radiant energy device that works off of the Schumann resonance. And it changes the consciousness of the people in the immediate area. Mm. And so how do you measure that with an oscilloscope and a voltmeter? It's very difficult to do. And by difficult, I mean impossible. But what I'm working to do is actually create a set of vetting protocols that will allow us to categorize, quantify, and easily cross-reference technologies that are being developed. So does it fall into the realm of an artifact, something that an inventor can use but nobody else can use, but is teaching us something essential about the nature of reality in the universe? Does it fall into the realm of a device that can be reproduced and can eventually go to market? And what type of device is it? Is it electrical in nature? Is it gravitic in nature? Is it magnetic in nature? Is it 0 point? What type of device is it, so we can then create testing protocols around it? And there's several layers of vetting, and actually the first layer of vetting requires very little classical engineering experience. Every overunity technology that I have seen, except for one, I knew immediately that it was overunity. It was beautiful, it sang to my soul. And so there was one device that I looked at and I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. And it took mathematics to actually show me a power curve and formula calculations to actually show me that it was overunity. So this vetting, there will be several layers, and I think that the first layer should be people that have a certain amount of experience but are not complete engineers, because as engineers we know what we know, and we need, on certain levels, we have to be the empty glass rather than the full glass. So that's where we'll start out, and then we'll throw it out to everybody. Please.
I'd like to hear what Jeff has to say, because I'm sure he's been through this about 1 million times. And I know in developing my technologies, I've been through this as well. Part of the problem, of course, is our education system is pretty much funded and manufactured by corporations. So to have people educated and schooled in academia, they have to be open to new ideas and concepts and technologies to begin with. And of course, so part of the solution is that the education process has to be taken out of the hands of corporations that have interest in the existing paradigm. But with that said, and also engineers and scientists from the mainstream education system, though, are very needed to create a uniform lexicon for describing these technologies, because one of the problems I run into, for example, in my presentation today, I talked about there's like, a dozen different names for this subtle energy that we're working with. And so, and there are a lot of magical connotations with it, people ascribing all kinds of magical sounding attributes to these things when it's physics. And there are a lot of magical things in physics, but we have to establish some kind of a standard lexicon. So classically trained scientists and engineers are needed to establish these kinds of standards and vocabulary. But we also, like you pointed out, Vernon, we need people of different disciplines outside of science and the mainstream science, and inventors, not just inventors, intuitive people, empaths, people who can see energy. One of the things that I do with my device is I have a friend who can actually see energy. He can see these subtle energy fields coming off of my devices. So when I make something new, I send it to him and say, what do you see? And he tells me. And it's very helpful, because then it helps me to look at other kinds of testing. And then with the kinds of devices that I make, because they affect human beings and living organisms of all kinds, ultimately the only thing that matters is, does the device do what it's intended to do? And so in my case, rather than trying to measure fields and intensities and those kinds of things, which are needed, we need to quantify these things and figure them out. But we also, ultimately, the only thing that matters is, what impact does the application have? Does it do its intended purpose? And that can be measured. It's like you can measure the results of these things in human beings and plants and animals and microbes, and you can measure the results of these energy devices. So that's what really matters. But I'd like to hear what Jeff has to say.
What I was going to talk about, basically, basically, I and Mike Waters love to build stuff out of junk. And what I mean by that is basically go down to the lowest common denominator. Now, there's got to be a cross between the scientist, the physicist, the engineer. Now, one of the abilities they have is they're very logical in their thinking, and they follow basically rules. And as long as those rules are solid, then they will keep applying those rules to any testing procedure there is. And you need that. And the reason why you need that is when you drive over a bridge and those rules are broken, you will figure out what happens. And so that's one of the reasons why engineers are really needed in one way. But when it comes to inventors, then what happens is you're bringing out a brand new idea. It's like a birth. And when that birth comes out, basically, you know, it's sludgy, it's messy. And so people say, well, how can I test that? Well, the two big things that I love to test with, and I'm going to be putting them on all my machines so the average person can understand just as much as a scientist with all his $700,000 salary and plus his education can understand, is if it's a spinning device, what you do is you put an RPM meter on it. And there's only two things RPM meter does. It goes up or goes down. And if it stays the same over a time period, and that time period beats anything that's hooked up to it to make it run and everything, then most people can understand, well, wow, that thing's going longer than what you said it would be going, you know, under the test consideration that you started. And then the other thing is just basic power meter that basically you have one, you basically have two on any device, and it'll show you that it's going up or it's going down. And generally the average person can understand that. But from the other end of this story, where everybody wants to prove something, there are a lot of people that what they want to innately do is they go about testing is they want to prove that this doesn't work. So they will meet that in their reality. They make their own reality. So everything that they're looking for, they will always meet with an end game of like, well, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. But if you go and approach it from the point of view of, wow, I'm looking for something new. I'm looking for the oddity. I'm looking for, wow, that's kind of cool. Let me see what that looks like. And from the type of testing devices, I've already talked over with a couple engineers and everything, and what we want to be able to do is develop test devices that will start doing like what is known, like people talk about scalar or radionics or radiant energy or all these, like as I call them, buzzwords, but you got to start with some word. And if you can develop it, you have to look back at the need. And the need is going to be, what do you want when you test something? What are you actually looking for? That's your need. And when you look for it, then you reverse engineer it and you say, well, the first thing I have to do is you have to detect it. And all stuff that's moving, no matter what it is in the ether and everything, what you're really doing is you're detecting ether. And depending how you detect it and how the circuit you build to detect it, then you go backwards. So in the front end of it will be some type of new something configuration. And what you have to do is you just have to basically meditate on it, think about it, whatever. And then it's like a pyramid. The capstone will be the new thing that detects what you're looking for, and then all the other stuff behind it is going to be regular engineering to be able to put it into something that is relatable to the engineering person that's able to actually read a meter or get some validation of something that they're actually looking at. But it's the same thing when you develop a device and everything. If you don't think about the need of why you're doing it, then there isn't, I mean, we can sit up here and basically, at the end of the day, think about all kinds of ideas. But then you ask yourself, where are you going with that idea? Reverse it. Ask, why do I need that idea? And say, like, I like to have like a light bulb light, and I want it to light all the time. I don't want to have a battery in it. So then at that point you say, okay, now figure out how to do that. And then that way you're just going to have to be open enough to be like a transceiver and receive the thoughts to be able to do it. And once you receive the thoughts, then all of a sudden, it's like while I've been up here already, a lot of the things all the panel have been talking about, I've already implemented, because one of the things I like doing when I was a little kid is I love playing, I can play like 4, 5, 6 levels of chess all at one time. And I love running all kinds of ideas right now that are running in my head that I'm looking forward to testing and talking about later on. And they're answering just weird little nuggets of information I know I'm going to be going back and putting into some of the devices, because I've been looking for certain answers on things. And going ahead, I let the machine tell me what it is. When I go into a lab every day, night before, I already plan out what I'm going to do. And then when I go in there, I just automatically do it. I put on some music, I sit there and get into the sun. Getting back to the health thing, the sun's the best thing you get. I mean, I can't get enough of it. You know, I'm really living in the wrong area. I should be in, you know, Bahamas or something like that. But at the end of the day, getting back to the testing ideas, learn to build outside of what we already have as testing instruments. If you don't, and see, this is a very area that nobody has really at all, if you think nobody's played around with free energy, nobody's decided to apply themselves to try and make new testing instruments. And so if you go ahead and you start doing that, then you can provide it to other people and engineers to say, here, I've developed a testing thing. Maybe this could help. This is the need I was looking for. So basically that's about it on, you know, the testing thing.
One last thing I'll put in. I know a lot of you are talking about ether, and you're talking about, you know, energies and subtle energies. There is the GDV device in the BioWell, which does measure the energetics in the field and in your body, and it will tell you when your whole system is off or whatever. And it's a beautiful device. It's come out of Russia.
Yeah.
And we do have our local experts here.
And a bottle of ouzo actually in your body will do very well for finding out where you are in life.
Well, I think you'll go back to the elements. We're basically the gases. Basically it's a gas discharge that come out in our breath, and the oxygen. And,
Also, there are, normally what happens too is the military usually has technologies to measure, and they, you know, over time we'll see those get out as those technologies are declassified.
Yeah, one of the things I have that I bring to the table with my lab and everything is the fact that I have a huge resource of a lot of people that have worked in the military, and I can call on them, and these people have worked on some of the most unbelievable classified projects. And the thing about it is that they are the type of people that will not talk about it. Privately, they will allude to it. I ask them certain questions, and at the end of the day, but what's really unique about it is they will help me in any way for anything on any project I want. And right now, several of them, I have about 3 of them, they're actually retiring, and they all want to actually donate all their services for free and help me, because they've already made their money, everything like that. But some of the test equipment that I know about is kind of unique. It's just like, in some of the simplistic methods that they chose to do this, they've had people. One of the big things is people wonder where like a lot of these brainiacs end up coming from. A lot of them are somewhat social misfits. You know, socially, they don't really get along and everything like that. And one of the things you go to MIT, Caltech, some of these stores, the private corporations already look for, there's a pattern. And at the end of the year of graduation, they will approach some of these people with contracts, and they will sit there and say, you will be able to work on some of the coolest, unbelievable equipment ever known to mankind. If you sign the contract, you'll probably go down or up depending on what they chose you to do. And then at the same time, you go ahead and you won't come back up here to work really. And the funny thing about it is these type of people are chosen because they don't really care about what's up here. They're not people. They just love to work on cool stuff. And I know 2 people that work in Area 51. It's unbelievable some of the stuff that they've done out there. And all this stuff is slowly leaking out. But at the same time, if it came out all at once, people would just, like, they'd lose themselves. You know, it's the same thing. People are still looking for, you know, the savior of whatever religion of the week they pray to come down here and fix everything. And do you really think that UFOs are just going to land here and go, okay, little kids, get your act together. We're going to give you all these cool toys, and you will be able to be, you know, in nirvana. No, the learning way is pain, more pain, and more pain. Once you can deal with pain, then that's the growing thing. I used to run sub 4-minute miles and everything, and one of the things is, if you want to run that type of thing, you will put up with pain. You have to do it. And there's no, you know, you're going to vomit after, like, you know, a 2-hour workout. You're going to sacrifice But if you sacrifice, and remember, you have that goal, meaning the need, then all of a sudden you sit there and that pain is offset by what you've met as a goal. And that's just a personal interest thing.
I'd like to say something on the subject of test equipment, just because as a musical instrument builder, I was never really satisfied with the way the pickup technology that was available was representing the sound of the instruments. And I worked in a very busy music store and worked on a lot of different instruments and tried to amplify them. And there really wasn't a really elegant solution to any of it. And so I was right at the front end when the Navy realized that the Russians had this special polymer film material, piezo material, and so they just released it to the public domain, and I was the first person to get access to this material, and I brought it to the musical industry. And it was rather groundbreaking when that happened, because it was so accurate that you could just stick it on anything. And so I went out to these trade shows, and I'd just walk around with the sensor and some headphones, and I could just walk up to any instrument and stick the sensor on it, and you listen to the instrument, listen to the headphones, and it sounded nearly identical. And people hadn't really heard that, and that was 30 years ago. And so as time has gone on, that I've been constantly refining that technology to now, one of the reasons why I'm here, I'm hugely honored to be here, is to offer to research scientists that if you're looking for some real high-performance sensors to primarily pick up vibrations is what they work at really well. They will go flat down to 0.5 hertz on the low end and all the way up to 2 gigahertz on the high end. And they have a nearly flat frequency response across that whole spectrum. So if somebody has some ideas about how to tap into the ethers and actually get some measurements of that, this material might be able to assist you, and I would be really happy to help in any way I can. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So we do have a time limit, and we need to be out of here by 9 o'clock. We need to be wrapping up by about 8:45. So we're going to. I need to let everybody know Paul LaViolette's thruster campaign is on the screen behind us. Please visit that and see what we can do to make that into a reality.
4 more days.
It goes up for 4 more days. Okay, so we have 2 questions, one about Ormus and one about the next steps. So let's do the Ormus EMF questions. How does EMF affect Ormus? Can you boost Ormus effects with good EMF from a Rife machine or some other technology? And what frequencies are best for healing? I'm going to jump on that one. EMF does affect Ormus, and it's also one of the things that EMF actually affects the body because of the Ormus inside of you. And when it resonates at the wrong frequency, it can actually create what Wilhelm Reich called DOR, deadly orgone radiation. And so you don't want that manifesting inside your body, so you really want to protect yourself against EMF and your Ormus, if at all possible. Whenever we ship any of our water or products, we wrap them in aluminum foil. Not a big fan of aluminum foil, but we wrap them in aluminum foil just to add a little bit more of the shielding involved there. Do you want to touch on that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with what Vernon says, and also you can program Ormus with frequencies, and then it can emit those frequencies permanently or semi-permanently. And so not only can EMF damage it, but you can also use electromagnetic radiation and scalar frequencies to program it, and then it will radiate scalar frequencies that can have very beneficial effects. As far as what frequencies go, I'll give you a little story. I attempted one time, I heard Tony Robbins say that wealthy people had the frequency of money. And so a friend of mine, Yeah, I thought, ooh, well, let's program a device to put out the frequency of money. And a friend of mine actually built one of these devices, and I was the guinea pig for it. And within 4 days, I was pretty much suicidal. It's like I didn't see any point to living. And what I didn't understand at the time, and he didn't understand, was cymatics. And so when I'm working on a device, I don't worry about frequencies per se, unless I've heard somebody tell me, oh, this particular frequency is good for this particular thing. And there certainly are. For example, like the QXCI SKIO and the Indigo quantum biofeedback devices, the QEG, or not the QEG, the GDV camera and other devices like that. They're very much programmed with specific frequencies with specific benefits. But what I look at is cymatics. So I look at frequencies that have cymatic value. If you've seen those experiments where you put sand on a sheet of metal, you put a tone vibrator under it, and you change frequencies, and when you hit certain frequencies, you get a geometric pattern in the sand. Well, those frequencies all correspond to frequencies that are harmonic to living organisms. So I look at those frequencies and play with those and see what they do. But ORMUS is a big part of that because it can amplify those frequencies, and it can also be programmed with frequencies.
I'm going to say this because I used to do a radio show, and I used to do a lot of things where I've done a few issues on the science of sound. And each body that we have in this room has a different resonant field. And so when we think of frequencies, we often think that we'll just tune into one thing. But if you look at the planets, and we're dancing around a solar system, each one of us is affected at different times in different ways. So when we were looking at the science of color, the science of sound, and whatever, you have to realize that your body, the one person who I remember saying, his name was Jeff Gidiak, and the same thing, the guy who did color, said, you can't just say, I'm going to give you blue because that's what you need. You may need to oscillate somewhat into that frequency because your body may not be ready for exactly the perfect thing. It may need to either acquire a taste for it or at least find its little ways for the particles to kind of dance comfortably into it. So sometimes there has to be a variation on the resonant field within a particular thing for a body to actually sync up with it. Otherwise, it'll either resist it or, like a kid say, you want to give me spinach, excuse me, I'd rather have ice cream, right? So I mean, there's the point where you might have to spoon feed it a bit. So the resonance is something that you have to. It's individual. Even Jonathan Golden, when I interviewed him, said that your best resonant machine is your own body because you can tune it yourself, and that's, I think, where we gravitate to music and certain things for healing.
This question's related to that. We got a question related to that directed to me, and everybody else feel free to jump in on this one. Is there a way to determine your healthy frequency? If so, how can you program the ORMUS? And my answer is exactly what you just said. The body doesn't have a single frequency. There are thousands of frequencies that all overlap in different parts of the body, and overall you've got a resonant frequency. It's very, very complex. Even my devices, they have multiple frequencies programmed into them in different ways. I use natural minerals, for example. I have 20 different natural minerals in my devices that each have different frequencies, and they have an overall resonant frequency. And then I have a circuit that generates certain frequencies, and then it pulses at a certain frequency. So it's very complex, and there's not any single frequency for the body. It's regarding like understanding what a healthy frequency is, or what healthy frequencies how you can utilize this concept. These quantum biofeedback devices or other energy devices that can measure energy in the body and even send energy back into the body. These are one of the ways, a practical way that the average person can use the concept of frequency for healing and improving life, whether it's music. For example, I encountered a woman years ago who used a classical harp, like a concert harp, to heal people, and she would have them put their feet, she did this with me, and put my feet on the soundboard, and she would play some chords, and she would ask me, which chords feel good to you? And I would select the chords that feel good, and then she would play a song. She would make up a song on the fly using those chords. And when she was done, man, I was super chilled, and I'd have a cleanse reaction the next day. It's like my body would dump all these toxins. Amazing. So there is no single frequency. And then how can you program ORMUS? Well, the best way is simply by the tried and true methods that we already know about, these ancient practices of Qigong, Tai Chi, Kundalini yoga, meditation, breath work, et cetera, there is a device called a BioVibe that has a little well, and you can put things into it, and you can program frequencies into it. And so that's how some of these, what I call Ormus homeopathics are made. People will take these scalar energy devices like a BioVibe and put, say, an Ormus water into it and program it with frequencies of certain things. And that's one way you can program Ormus. Anybody else?
Yeah, triad wave again has an application in this area, because one of the things that we find with using various types of healing on people is that technology that works just unbelievably well in 95% of cases will not work in other cases. And it's not so much about the efficacy of the technology, it's the coherence of the body and its ability to recognize what's actually good for it, because it is so out of balance and you've got different organs competing against each other. So one of the benefits of the triad wave in a healing environment is the ability again to give the body the insight to see what's happening in itself and outside in its environment, and to say, oh crikey, actually I need that. And so that is another sort of layering effect for the body to be able to say, okay, I understand what's going on now and I can accept that healing energy. So that's another pretty profound impact of something, being able to work with many modalities that can actually benefit the body, and all of the things that have been mentioned so far are brilliant. So the ability to induce an extra layer of coherence and understanding within the body is very important for it to be able to accept what's actually good for it and be able to work with it.
The other thing I think also about the healing part in any body is the fact that basically my body is a complete, absolute mess right now. But I still have, like I said, I set a goal for myself. So all the toxins and everything are still swimming like mad through my body. But to heal, you have to give yourself the time to heal. You cannot keep pushing your body, your mind at a point, and then all of a sudden say your body like, well, I'm going to take the weekend off and like sort of heal. Because if you've pushed your body for 20 days, you better believe at least you're going to have to push back. You're going to have to heal at least 20 days. So the reason why I'm basically a mess, no matter what it is the fact that when I did the project, the pull out, and it took a long time to go ahead and do it through a whole bunch of, all kinds of just goofy things. I said to myself, in 3 years, I have got to catch up on all my energy projects. So all the energy projects I've done basically are over about 90 of them, and they were all built within 2.5 years. I have half a year to finish the program basically up. And then I will actually take a break. But and then the body will sit here and know that you're going to take that break, and then decide to actually, hey, relax, heal, go, let me redo it. And remember, your body, and so is the planet, it's a trash dump. It takes and transmutes stuff. My daily eating is basically a slice of pizza and beers at nighttime. It's as simple as that for me. And the beers just wash out all the lactic acid. One of the things is, when you look at a superior athlete, the reason, the ability that they can run or jump higher or anything is the ability to train and their ability to withstand the lactic acid and get it out of their body when you have the toxins that go in there. And so for the toxins, for me, for just moving the lab and working all my life with all kinds of metals and everything, my lab was literally, it had a floor, and basically under the floor, it had literally 1 inch of black mold. And I had no problem with it, When I took the lab apart, I had about 22 sheets of plywood, and I'd hold them up and I'd scrape the mold down and I'd have mold. One of the things you have to realize about anything on this planet is embrace it. Just say, hey, have fun with it, and it will respond to you. And the little black mold goes, yeah, hey, how you doing? What's up? And when you embrace stuff like that, then nothing will hurt you. And the biggest thing is just absolutely have fun with yourself. This is to have fun at the end of the day. And the biggest things is, I think everybody takes everything so seriously because they're trying to do everything so quickly. Believe me, you've got millenniums and millenniums of lifetimes to go through. You're going to screw up, everybody does. But in the screw up is where you learn. All the screw ups and everything, all the tests when you're looking down and you're looking for something to work out and it doesn't do it, that's basically how you really learn.
And I'm going to say one thing. I've done a few issues on healing, and it can happen in an instant or it can take you a lifetime.
Yep.
There is no magical component to that. So yeah. I've seen it all.
All right. Agree 100%.
Okay, we are down to technically about 15 minutes left. So we have 2 more questions. This one, it's who can speak to the 432 frequency versus the 440 standard A tuning?
That's you.
Do you have any experience with the 432 versus 440 standard A?
Well, yeah, as an instrument maker, one of the things that determines the quality of the sound, the volume of the sound, is the tension that the instrument is under at various pitches, and that has a lot to do with the string gauges if it's a stringed instrument. So there's a balance point in terms of how tight you can make things on an instrument before it explodes or implodes. And my understanding of this, it's rather controversial right now, was that there were tuning forks available as tuning references, but there were different orchestras all over the world that some people were like, well, if we play and our A note is 430 hertz, it's just a little more deeper, a little more sensual sounding, it's more emotional or something like that. And then there were these other orchestras somewhere else, and they're like, well, gosh, if we tune to A 450 hertz, it's like everything is so tight and energized, and the instruments are louder, and they're getting ready to explode, and it's just really dynamic performance because everything's a little more energized. And so for touring musicians that were playing with different groups, it was really very difficult for them because they'd have to be tuning and retuning their instruments, these wild variations, and it was just raising hell on the instruments, basically. And somewhere somebody came along and said, well, why don't we just meet in the middle and we'll settle on 440, and that happened to be kind of in the middle of the range of tunings that these orchestras were using. And so they voted on it or did something like that, and it's called the corporate tuning for that reason. It was just a huge compromise, and it does, as far as my understanding is, it doesn't have any harmonic correlation to anything. And when you're looking at cymatic experiments and they show a vibrating plate of water, or it's usually done with water that I've seen them, 440 hertz is just this jumbled mess of random chaos. And then they take the same plate with the same water and they turn the frequency generator down to 432 hertz, and all of a sudden these beautiful Chladni patterns show up, and you've got sacred geometry and you've got coherency. And since our bodies are made up primarily of water, this is a fairly significant thing to recognize, that music that's tuned to 432 has the ability to really move you and move around in your cells and activate the water and bring coherency in. And so I have a recording studio and lots and lots of instruments that I've gathered over the years to test my pickup systems in, and I also like working on them. I repair them and things like that. So I have a few hundred instruments. And I was getting ready to bring people into my studio, and I threw out on Facebook with to about 5,000 musical friends on there, and I said, I'm about to tune 200 or 300 instruments, including my grand piano, and what do you guys think? Should it be 440 or 432? And this giant flame war ensued, and it was awesome. And it had like a few hundred responses from everybody, and I had to go through it. It went on for weeks, and some people were extremely passionate about it. And it turned out that at least of the musical friends that I associate with, mostly acoustic musicians, they tend to be very soulful people. There's not a lot of death metal rockers in there, but the 70% of them said you should tune everything to 432, even though it's unconventional, and people will take the material out of there, and they will have problems when they try to interface it with conventionally tuned musicians, that you should still go for it anyway because it's going to resonate with people better. And I thought that was really awesome. So I just had a friend of mine build a hand pan, which is, they call them hong drums. They're shaped like UFOs, and they have the notes around the top, and they sound a little bit like a steel drum. And they take a lot of time to hammer all those notes and get them just right. And I had him tune it to 432 for that reason. And it's one of the only ones that I'm aware of that's like that. But I think most of the musicians that are still in 440, they're just doing it because that's the convention. And if the whole world said, okay, well screw that, we got it wrong, I think everybody would go to 432. Though I did have somebody take it take it one step further, and they said, well, do you know about 452? And I was like, no. So anyway, there's still some science to be figured out about that, but it's a good question, and it's still very active in a lot of people's minds, for sure.
All right, we're going to take time for one more question and then one quick interaction. We have approximately 14 minutes left before we need to be really moving out of here pretty quickly, so we're going to take 2 minutes each, if that's all right. And the question is, what do we do to bring together this fragmented industry?
Okay, fragmentation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's diversity, if you want to look at it another way, and that's been an enormous learning experience for a lot of people, and that's brought strength and richness to the kind of people who are in this room and the kind of people who are watching the broadcast. So the big question now is about intention, I believe. And when we're dealing with intention, I think it's quite important not to say you're going to be healed. It's you're already healed. So I think the intention has already been set. And the intention will resonate with certain people, and those people are ready to resonate at that frequency will say, okay, I'm in. If this is the intention, I'm in. And we need that level of commitment. And then there's going to be a document published after this weekend, which goes into the detail of the intention, structure, processes, all the rest of it. And that's an opportunity for co-creation, because then if you've got a better idea, put it forward. And what we want then is a group of people who can actually say, okay, I can commit to that, and you know what, I'm willing to go through this intention and using these processes and agree with whatever the majority decides, and go along on that basis. And if we have the resources to try more than one thing, then we can try a number of different approaches at the same time, because we also want to try and keep in that diversity at the same time as focusing upon the same intention. So I would tend to say it's already happened, and let's get on with it.
Karen.
My commitment has been into education. That's why I do the magazine. That's why they're theme-based. That's why they cross disciplines. That's why I created a school for gifted kids with learning differences. I've already created some of the curriculum, and my next step is to help film and document some of these people who are actually having breakthroughs, and to create a network with the people that are here and beyond, and to make sure that it goes out to the world. Because I think, like the Tower of Babel, like it shows in the thing, we're too divided, and if we can do it as a collective network of new education, I think it would be great. When I did do the school for the years that I did, I can tell you the kids loved coming to school. They couldn't wait for summer to be over. And it was because we brought in a lot of the new technologies. We did a lot of hands-on. We worked with a lot of museums. And we brought experts in for every hour of every day. We had PhD handwriting experts. So I think we need to honor the process and the journey of the individual kids. And I know that we can do that because I've done it.
Nice.
Well, also, we have to remember that we're in the very infancy of these technologies and these concepts, and I don't know that it's even an industry yet. It's like the Wild West, and just like any new paradigm in the beginning, it's a free-for-all, and there's all kinds of standards haven't been established, vocabularies and lexicons haven't been established. You look at the computer industry 50, 60 years ago, man, Silicon Valley alone, what went on in Silicon Valley in the early 60s was chaos. There was, one professor who developed the semiconductor spun off into hundreds of inventors in Silicon Valley within a few years. And it was chaos, and it was massive competition, and on and on and on. So I think that's what we're seeing in this era, is that we're at the infancy of all of these technologies and ideas. And as they mature, we'll naturally see a lot of the chaos go away, and standardization of vocabulary and acceptance and all of that. So I think it's just a matter of time.
I'm actually still forming my thought on this one.
Okay.
Well, I feel like my area of primary interest is to assist people in tapping into source consciousness. That I feel like that's where there's a huge wealth of information there, and it bypasses a lot of the limitations of the formative mind, but there is a huge body of intelligence there, and I guess you can also call it the collective superconscious. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we're here, sharing that, even though we're in our respective fields. But I think there's different ways that we can come into tune with that and create our access channels to that type of consciousness. And that's the area that I'm particularly interested in. And it does respect everybody's individuality, but yet we are the meeting of minds, and that to me is awesome. So anyway, I'm really glad to see you all here.
I'd like, I'm ready. What I'd like to do is basically tell you that I'm a hardware guy, and I want to I used to build race cars and things like that, and so I want to build the exact same things with basically the hardware and get it out there. And I want to go in two directions. I want to give it and license the technology out to manufacturers and companies that actually want to use the new ideas. And two, I want to be able to make kits and everything that will be able to go into the school and learning centers so that we can actually start getting this technology out. It's got to go through the kids. And then the third thing I like to do is, once all the dust sort of settles after a couple of these things get released, then be able to teach people and have workshops and very quickly show them how a lot of this technology is. Because the problem right now is that you have a lot of YouTube videos, you have a lot of people that are searching on this and that, but they don't have the time right now to like just casing like a Joe Newman motor or something like that. They don't want to go through the time to learn it, but I could teach it to you in a very, very quickly manner. So that's basically what I like to do. But at the end of the day, it's the hardware, and the hardware's got to be built, and it's got to be built out of, as I call it, basically junk. Then after that, you can turn it into like pure gold at that point. It can look good. Believe me, these cell phones, when they first came out, if people remember how like gooky they were, and you could barely text one message, and now they're just phenomenal devices. So it's basically a frontier, and at the end of the day, that frontier, it will settle out. And unlike gold was just a singular piece of element people were after. With the free energy thing, they're looking at a huge difference, because it's like in 2000, people wouldn't know what the internet was and everybody wanted to throw money at, but at least all the investors and people asked, they got one single question and answer on it, and it was explained to them, they threw the money at it. With the free energy thing, you've got a montage of God knows what. And so it's just who you ask and how you ask and whether people are willing to risk the advice. And these, the stuff I just saw up there, these fund drives, what's neat about it and why people love it is that they look at something they like, and the marketplace is going to be dictated by all that. And the big companies and the dinosaur companies are scared to death, because the people are starting to wake up, and they're going to say what we want in Walmart. They're going to say what you want at any other place. So at that point, I want to thank all the people out there in, I guess, internet land. I want to thank all the people here. I want to thank all the people up here. And at the same time, I may or may not be able to watch you personally here, but I guarantee you that I will be putting all the shows up on my own video thing and watch it while I actually work. And I want to thank the whole GlobalBEM for inviting me. And if everything works out right, and if people can share enough to get things going, I want to come back here in next year or the year after to be able to have a working device. One of the things to show everybody, and if that works out real quickly, I will be doing a talk at the psychotronics.org convention, I think in about 6 weeks up in Chicago. And if things work out, I will probably have a total working device that you could go ahead and build up, build down. So that's where I basically stand. And thank you. Psychotronics, I can't spell my name. That's one thing, I have no clue.
PSYCHOTRONICS.org? Is it .org?
Yes, I think so.
.org.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, exactly.
Psychotronics.
Psychotronics.
You must have won the Bumblebee contest.
Yeah, it's been the oldest sort of convention thing. They're putting up archives, everything about their whole society, but they've been around basically for about 40 years.
All right, there was a request to do the water demonstration one more time for anyone who didn't see it. So if I can have my panel members stand up, and we're going to kind of form a circle here.
Oh, okay.
You've been volunteered.
Okay. We put our chairs in. And then
So
we have
chaos into coherence. Yes, it is. Okay.
Are we going in a circle?
So everybody get into a circle. Come on around. Come on around. Close the circle. Let's see. I'm going to give this to you. Hold the bottom. And you reach in with your finger and touch the top without touching the side at all. Wait.
Is everybody here?
Yep.
Whoa!
That was did you hear it?
Yeah, we heard it.
Woo!
Baby.
Wow.
I love
So this is yours. Ooh, you put your finger in it, so it's all yours.
Yeah.
Now when you drink that,
whole
kind
bottle
of,
at one time.
yes, do that. No, don't do that. Do it tomorrow morning. Kind of put it against your arm, zap yourself, or if you just, we have shock junkies now who drink water, just drink it and get the shock
One of
that
the
way.
things I will share with everybody, and there are people in the audience that know this and everything, I will share this with some people and everything, because basically I don't drink water. I never have. I don't eat vegetables. I don't do any of that. And if I do,
And he just
water,
turned 40?
Yeah. And if I do actually drink water, the funny thing about it is it's only a little bit of distilled water, usually at nighttime once in a while.
You gave it to the wrong
And you have
guy.
to realize that your body has to keep a pH. So when you think about where everybody today drinks a lot of water and everything, but the problem about that is the fact that it's like putting a battery. If you have a battery, can you imagine keep pouring water into your battery constantly, and see how that's going to end up? Your battery's not going to work. The one thing I do is when I go to the shore, I will swim about 3 or 4 miles, and I will drink about a gallon of water within that swim, because I love salt water.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We need to evacuate. We need to be out of here by 9 o'clock. So thank you all. Be back here at 8:45 tomorrow morning. Oh, yes, yes. A lot of the speakers and attendees are going to the Old Town Cafe. It's just right down this road, downtown Bastrop. It's right down this road, and I think it's on the left-hand side.
Great job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You two guys.